I call this meeting to order. Good evening and welcome to the June 17th, 2025 business meeting of your Ashland City Council. Councilor Dale will offer the land acknowledgement.
We acknowledge and honor the Aboriginal people on whose ancestral homelands we work, the Akira-Kutsum Band of the Shasta Nation, as well as the diverse and vibrant Native communities who make their home here today. We honor the first stewards in the Rogue Valley and the lands we love and depend on. Tribes with ancestral lands in and surrounding the geography of the Ashland watershed include the original past, present, and future indigenous inhabitants of the Shasta, Takelma, and Athabascan people. We also recognize and acknowledge the Shasta village of Quakaka, where the crow lights, that is now the Ashland City Plaza.
Thank you. And Councilor Hanson will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Sherrill.
Here.
Dale.
Here.
Bloom.
Here.
Graham.
Here.
Kaplan.
Here.
Hanson.
Here.
Thank you. We have a couple of announcements this evening. I want to draw first everyone's attention to how to sign up to speak to us this evening. If you would like to speak to the council, there are sign-up forms at that tray there, and you'll make sure that you fill them out and give them to Alyssa. Alyssa, can you raise your hand? Make sure that she knows that that you have handed that in. And also, please, when you're filling that out, make sure that you indicate whether you are here to speak on a specific agenda item or whether you are here to speak for public forum, which is when you would talk to us about something that is not on the agenda. By doing that, you help us bring you up at the appropriate time. A couple of announcements. This upcoming on June 22nd, so Sunday, at Railroad Park, we are going to honor Juneteenth by unveiling the Lorraine Hansberry Playwrights plaque. And so we'll be doing both of those things, both as a Juneteenth celebration and also as the next installation of the Playwright Walk piece. So hopefully folks can come out and join. It starts at 2 o'clock in Railroad Park. And also, our contingent will be heading down very soon to see our sister city in Guanajuato, and then they will be coming back up for our July 4th festivities as we do every year. So looking forward to reconnecting with our sister city folks and making a strong recommitment to our sister city relationship. We also have a proclamation today for Bee City. For Pollinator Week. Whereas pollinators such as thousands of species of bees are essential partners in producing much of our food supply, and whereas pollinators provide significant environmental benefits that are necessary for maintaining healthy, diverse ecosystems in towns and cities, and whereas pollination plays a vital role for the trees and plants of our community, enhancing our quality of life and creating recreational and economic development opportunities. And whereas the City of Ashland manages parks, public landscaping, and other public lands that may include greenways and wildlife habitats, and whereas the City of Ashland provides recommendations to developers and residents regarding landscaping to promote wise conservation stewardship, including the protection of pollinators and maintenance of their habitats. Now, therefore, I, Tanya Graham, Mayor of the City of Ashland, do hereby proclaim the week of June 16th to the 22nd, 2025, as National Pollinator Week in the City of Ashland, and as Ashland is an affiliate of Bee City USA, urge all citizens to learn more about how to make Ashland a more welcoming home to our pollinator friends. We will now do the official swearing in of our new City Councilor. You can, or would those two microphones work? Let's do the two microphones there.
Let me me standing or sitting? What do you want?
I don't know, it's more official to stand, I feel.
Yes.
Who do I face?
You'll face her, but go ahead and turn that microphone on. There you go.
Okay. I, Derek Sherrill, do solemnly swear and affirm
I, Derek Sherrill, do solemnly swear and affirm
that I will support the Constitution and the laws of the United States, the state of Oregon,
I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States, the state of Oregon,
and the charter and the laws of the city of Ashland,
and the charter and the laws of the city of Ashland,
and that I will faithfully and honorably perform the duties of the office for which I am about to assume.
and that I will faithfully and honorably perform the duties of the office for which I'm about to assume.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And we went ahead and moved that up a little bit in the agenda so that it would make more sense when he votes on these next couple of things. So we are now to approval of minutes. Are there any changes to the minutes? Okay, the floor is open for a motion to accept the minutes. Councilor Hanson?
Sure. I make a motion to accept the minutes as is for both the June 2nd study session and also the June 3rd business meeting.
Second.
Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Hanson,
Yes.
Kaplan,
Yes.
Bloom,
Yes.
Dale,
Yes.
Sherrill.
Yes.
Thank you. And on the consent agenda, are there any items that councilors would like to pull? Okay, the floor is open for a motion to approve the consent agenda. Councilor Dale?
Thank you, Mayor. Move to approve the consent agenda as is.
I'll second.
Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Dale,
Yes.
Bloom,
Yes.
Kaplan,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Sherrill.
Yes.
And we are to public forum. Alyssa, have we received any requests to speak at public forum? Thank you. Okay, we have 9 speakers who have signed up for this evening. We generally have about a 15-minute time block, but we're a little ahead of schedule, so I'll give everyone 2 minutes. What you will do is you'll come up when I call your name, and we can go ahead and create a short line over against this wall. You'll speak at the podium, and you'll notice that you have a couple of ways to help you keep your time. This clock will give you the rundown of your 2 minutes, and also there will be a chime that happens at 20 seconds before the end of your time. So the first time you hear the chime, you can keep going until you hear the chime happen a second time. There's also a light indicator on the podium that tells you when you get to the yellow light. You're green until you get to that 20-second, and then it goes to yellow, and then it'll flash red also at the time when your time is up. When that second chime goes, if you can just finish the sentence you're on, that will help us move on to the next person. So I will call out the first several people. We have Paul Mozina, Clarinda Maripin, Linda Adams, and Brian Storer. Please tell us your name and the city in which you reside at the beginning of your testimony.
Paul Mozina, Ashland. I'd like to comment on the recently passed 2025-2027 budget. And the budget was passed by the CBC on the 14th of May, and the council met for a study session on the 19th of May. And you all debated something intensely that wasn't on the agenda. You brought up amendments to the 2025-2027 budget that was passed by the CBC, and it wasn't on the agenda. At that May 19th study session, Councilor Dahl expressed his concerns about how to, quote, unwind the decision of the CBC. He thought that some kind of resolution would be required, possibly working the budget committee into the amending process, and that would need to happen prior to adopting the budget. There was no disagreement on that, but it never happened. The council merely gave direction to the city administrator to change the sources for the funding of the child care grant program. At the June 3rd business meeting, there should have been an agenda item requiring a council vote to amend the budget approved by the CBC to redefine the funding sources for the child care grant program. The vote on the biennial budget could have followed or could have been delayed till this meeting. When the biennial budget agenda was introduced, Deputy City Manager Jordan Rockland claimed that the decision to change the sources for the child care grant funds had been, quote, supported by council via motion. There was no motion. There was no vote taken. There was no inclusion of the CBC. No one corrected her. You all knew that you hadn't voted on any amendments to the approved budget. Please consider that the city charter says no action by the council shall have legal effect unless the motion for the action and the vote thereon take place at proceedings open to the public. There was no motion or vote publicly taken by the council to approve the amendment to the CBC's approved budget, and thus the change in funding sources for the child care grant program have no legal effect. You all know that when you amend a motion or resolution, you must vote on the amendment first before you vote on the item as amended, and yet you chose to ignore the standard procedure. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Clarenda Maripin, and I'm a citizen of Ashland, resident herein. And I'd like to ask you all to create a committee looking forward for about a year, an ad hoc committee to future-proof Ashland against the financial devastation coming from the federal government. I know this sounds intense and long, but I think a lot of folks here are looking at a very micro view, and we need to look at a macro view. I'd like to give you two stories that I came across this weekend. One, I have a friend who, his father is also local. They went to go get medicine. Their medicine went up to $650. They could not afford it. There is no way to get that support for that coming down in the next year. So they're going to try to find monies for it, but they can't. I have another person, very well off, owns a house with his husband here in Ashland. He is also on monthly drugs for different things. He can't get it through Ashland Rite Aid, which may or may not be closing according to the people he's been talking to there. He's getting mixed messages. He can't get it through Ashland Drug. They won't carry it. It's too expensive, even though he's got insurance for all this. So these are the kinds of things that were happening. Oh, let's not also look at the food bank. In the food bank, the number of people have doubled. We don't know if that's going to double again. We understand that they're independently funded, but if they're independently funded and other people are looking at that pool of money or pool of food, they're not going to get it. We also understand, for instance, that the Meals on Wheels will not be funded in 2026. I've spoken to the head of that. We have all of these things coming down. We know that, for instance, the Housing Authority is cutting 44% of reduction in rental assistance programs. That will affect in Ashland, let me see, I have it. There's 1,533 people. 44% of that will not be getting their rental assistance in the future. Ashland is not looking as a whole at all these things are coming down.
Linda Adams, Oak Street, Ashland. Council, staff, and fellow residents. Recent changes and proposed amendments to our city's enhanced law enforcement area ordinance will be discussed at a study session on August 4th. While I acknowledge the stated intentions of public safety and addressing persistent negative behaviors, I must strongly voice my opposition to these changes, particularly as they tread dangerously close to infringing upon fundamental constitutional rights guaranteed by the 14th and 8th Amendments. While this ordinance aims to punish conduct, its application in a city with limited shelter options creates a de facto punishment for existing without a private space, making life incredibly difficult and arguably inhumane for our most marginalized citizens. Any changes to our city's ordinances must uphold the highest standards of justice and compassion. Let us not sacrifice due process or inflict undue hardship in the name of perceived order. I urge the City Council to reconsider these provisions, to prioritize robust judicial review, and to explore solutions that uplift all members of our community rather than merely displacing our most vulnerable.
Thank you. After Brian Storer, we have Gail Patton, Emily Simon, and Letta Shapiro.
Hi, my name is Brian Storer. I'm from Central Point, Oregon. I wanted to address you guys about the Genesis LRAD emergency management system. I sent you guys some emails. I'm going to start off with one of the events. On May 9th, I was assaulted multiple times with an acoustic weapon, Genesis LRAD, while staying at the Lithia Springs Hotel in Ashland. I checked in on 5/9/2025 at 5 p.m. and left at 5/10/2025 at 11 a.m. for my girlfriend's birthday. I was hit in the head, back, and chest hard. This caused multiple mild panic attacks from my heart rate rising from being hit with the acoustic weapon. It also caused sharp pains to my back, and I was also hit in the head, which caused a headache. This also warms you up when you're being hit with the acoustic weapon, so I went outside to smoke. I know the time's limited. This has been going on. I live in Central Point. It's been going on since July of 2023. I've called everybody from the FBI to the Oregon State Police to the Central Point Police. I've sat down with the police chief, Medford, in Central Point. He tells me I should increase my Zoloft and Wellbutrin. Chief Ivins tells me I'm imagining this, and it's not happening. I wanted to put on the record what the Genesis LRAD system is. It's in all 36 counties of Oregon. They're an acoustic weapon. And so there's information in here what the uses of these LRADs in the history of them are. They're a weapon of war. They've been used in Afghanistan, Iraq. They're used on military vessels, bases. And so I just wanted you guys to go through that. And I can't find a meaningful way to make a complaint or find out who the operators of these LRADs are. I believe it's potentially they're using them in an investigation and misusing them. They've done it at my home. I have 4 kids. They continue to do this at my home. This is education about how they can hit you through a wall, a window. That's where I'm at.
Thank you. If you can leave that with Alyssa, the materials for us. Thank you.
My name is Gail Patton, and I live on Michelle Avenue in Ashland.
Thank you.
I attended my first coffee and conversation with city officials and staff today, and I wanted to, thank you for offering the informal gathering. One request and a suggestion. Those of you who are there, introduce yourselves to people. I know some of you had little name tags on without glasses. Most of us couldn't read them. But I know it was my first time there. I talked to a couple who came first time, and they ended up leaving because they were a little unsure of what was happening and what to do. And I think if just having a short introduction, say, hey, I've been on the city council for so long, or this is what I do, would be helpful. One of the topics that came up today was the city council being transparent. I know right now you guys are making a lot of decisions that affect all of us as far as financially. They're hard decisions, and I just say, own those decisions, be transparent about it, and, tell the what and the why of why you made the decisions, and just include the people of Ashland in those, for what you can. It just seems like people feel like things are being done without any thought for those of us, and I know that's not true, but it sure helps to just be transparent and own it. Thank you.
Thank you. After Emily Simon, we have Letta Shapiro, Kate Hartzell, and Debbie Neiswander.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Emily Simon. I live in Ashland, Oregon, and many of you know me because I am the chair emeritus and co-chair emeritus of the of Ashland Social Equity and Racial Justice Advisory Committee. And I am here tonight to thank every person in this room who's sitting at that dais, and Gina Duquesne in her absence, for assisting us in getting this plaque into the ground that there will now be the unveiling for on Sunday, June 22nd at 2 o'clock. And I would particularly like to thank at this point publicly, so it's on the record, Sabrina Cotta and Brandon Goldman for their incredible work to make sure that this happened quickly. This has been a wonderful collaboration of the Public Arts Advisory Committee and comes from our efforts to reach across committees to get things done. It has donated art by Micah Blacklight, cast in bronze by Jack Lanford, all donated, and with the not only acceptance, but with the, and I quote, excitement at the impact that Lorraine Hansberry's words will have on the city of Ashland from the Lorraine Hansberry Trust. So I hope that everybody in this room will come to this celebration of diversity and equity and inclusion in an era where it is hard to find, and we always feel like we're going uphill, but the city of Ashland didn't do that. The city of Ashland helped us do something permanent that will last beyond all of our times. And this has given me hope when I look at the national scene. And on that note, thank you again, and I have posters for anybody in the room who wants the information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I guess I'm on.
Yes.
Before tonight, I had decided I would not ever come before council again to speak, since it appeared to be a total waste of my time and energy. I have emailed, spoken at council meetings, posted on social media. I get it. I am a pest. I keep asking for what should be public information and get refused. Well, the audacity you showed tonight made me come back for one last try. And I don't know if this is actually going to be on the agenda, but it was listed. Tonight, the council would come with new staff salary levels that place Ashland staff pay of nearly every comparable city in Oregon. Given the city's history regarding generous salaries and benefits, I do not find this surprising. What I do find unusual is I feel that you have lied to us. Throughout the budget process, new fees were discussed for weeks. Threats were made. We were advised that if we approved new fees, we would be able to keep all services at current levels. Now you say we need to cut the very services we were told were covered by the new fees in order to pay for these new salary increases. This must be seen for what it is, a huge lie and a complete betrayal of our trust.
Thank you. Sir, there is no clapping, no noise making from the audience, only when you have the floor at the microphone. Go ahead.
Thanks. My name is Kate Hartzell. I live in Ashland. I'm here to clear up a misunderstanding of something that happened in the May 20th meeting. At that time, my input referenced several ELEA qualifying violations as status crimes, and Mr. Bloom's response asserted that homelessness and violations related to those are not status crimes. I like the law. I served 7 years on the state board of ACLU, so I wanted to make sure that I wasn't making a mistake in what I said that night. So part of my research involved an article from University of Cincinnati, but the one I want to read a couple of excerpts from tonight is from the Stanford Law Review. It's a 2018 article. I can send it to you. It says that laws targeting homeless conduct have their origins in vagrancy and loitering laws, which criminalized wandering and appearing in public without visible means of support. That's history. After the Supreme Court struck down these early vagrancy and loitering laws as unconstitutionally vague in violation of the 14th Amendment Due Process Clause, cities changed the form but not the substance of their official efforts to control homelessness. This article documents an ongoing active legal debate, that is, criminalizing public life-sustaining behavior without adequate resources. In this case, the resource was shelter, but certainly loitering related to not only garbage but urination, effectively criminalizes the status of homelessness itself in violation of the 8th Amendment. And the authors argue that the success of that argument depends on whether the court's status crimes doctrine extends beyond status to related conduct. I'm not going to have enough time tonight to finish the examples that I wanted to share about this. I'm not an attorney, I'm not a constitutional lawyer, nor is Mr. Bloom or I think anyone up there. So making categorical statements with certainty is something that I think we should avoid when we do this debate.
Thank you. Yes.
I can't hold it because I need to flip through data. I did bring you all a packet, but they're not going to distribute the packets. I was hoping we could all go through it together. It is what it is. My name's Debbie Nicewander.
Can we start the timing again to deal with the tech issues?
Thank you, I appreciate that. Okie dokie, here we go. So last night I spoke about the annual report, and so tonight I was going to give you my annual report. And I first wanted to state that all of my data comes out of the police blotter reports. So the first page is prohibited camping, the night lawn, and what's missing. The second page is a citation for prohibited camping on the night lawn, and the reason given is the premise is now open to the public. Laughable. Okay, and then the third, fourth, and fifth are copies of what I get from Muni Court to collaborate the blotters, and it's showing lack of information, so I'm gathering information through Muni Court to fill in the blanks that the police department is neglecting to put into the reports. This page is 22 annual report. The police chief says, ensuring 100% accuracy in reporting is problematic and hard to achieve, but they will work towards additional training for entire team to ensure the most accurate reporting possible. This hasn't happened yet, and we're in 2025. I've also included 2 copies of civil expulsions. One is the night lawn, and one is the parks. Neither of these come under the annual report, and they need to. We have no record of civil expulsions, but yet you want to consider additional civil expulsions. Then there is my 2024 lacking quality in life report, and then my report and arrest log, how we're way behind on that, and then a little excerpt from Muni Court stating decrease in revenues, et cetera, et cetera. You got a week off in a couple weeks, so look over the data, educate yourselves. Thank you.
Okay, we are to the first public hearing. PA Appeal 2025-00021, an appeal on the record of the Planning Commission's approval of PA-T2-2024-00053, a physical and environmental P&E constraints review permit to allow the construction of a new single-family dwelling on hillside lands, severe constraints lands, at 231 Granite Street, including an exception to the development standards for hillside lands, a tree removal permit to remove 74 trees, and a variance to the flag drive standards. Sabrina?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, Council is being asked to either affirm or overturn the decision made by the Planning Commission regarding this applicant. Council's role is to determine if there is substantial evidence in the record to support the Planning Commission's decision or not. So Brandon and Derek will walk you through that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Brandon Goldman, Community Development Director. Derek Severson, Planning Manager, does have a PowerPoint to show you some of the appeal criteria or the appeal grounds of appeal. Before we go into that, I did want to reiterate that the Planning Commission did hold a hearing on this application on March 12th and then adopted findings approving the application for the single-family home on severe constraint hillside lands, adopting findings on April 22nd. Upon receipt of sending those findings to the impacted parties, those that provided information at the Planning Commission, the city timely received an appeal on May 2nd from neighboring property owners and their council outlining 25 grounds of appeal. It is those 25 grounds that are included in your packet, and we'll go through them relatively quickly, as it's ultimately the applicants or the appellant and the applicant are both present this evening and can provide summaries of their written comments that they received, that they were provided to the city prior to June 6th as written submissions. Derek has up on the screen now that the application details, which the mayor had already stipulated, related to development of hillside lands that are greater than 25% being and also severe constraint lands of slopes greater than 35% were also proposed to be disturbed by the development. Additionally, they asked for exceptions to some of the development standards for hillside lands through the hearing process. The applicant modified their proposal to remove exceptions relating to the vertical wall height and articulation on the downhill side. The application also included a variance to the driveway standards in terms of grade, as it's a pre-existing lot of record that was platted in 1996 and was a lot that existed prior to the development of our hillside ordinance. And as such, in order to utilize the flag drive, would necessitate exceeding the maximum slope allowed by code, and as such requested a variance to that standard. We do find that any legal lot of record within the city is capable of being built, I should say residentially zoned lot within the city is capable of being built as a single family home or a duplex, and in this case the application was for a single family home. And with that, I would reiterate that what was presented in the council's business meeting council communication, that the council's role in an appeal is limited to an on-the-record appeal. Beginning in 2008, the city of Ashland modified our appeal process to require to establish that the council no longer serves as a de novo hearing body where you hear the application anew from the ground up. Rather, you review the entirety of the record that was provided to the Planning Commission for their consideration. And in that regard, the City Council's role is not to re-adjudicate the application, but rather review the Planning Commission's decision, their findings, and determine whether the Planning Commission erred. The appellant has identified areas where they believe the Planning Commission has erred in the adoption of their findings, and the applicant is here to present how the materials that they provided prior to the June 6th deadline and how the findings adequately address the criteria of approval. And with that, I'll turn it over to Derek to go over those grounds of appeal.
Okay, as Brandon mentioned, the appellants Len Eisenberg and Kenton Pamela McLaughlin were parties to the original application and timely submitted an appeal request detailing 25 appeal issues. I apologize that this is going to be a text-heavy presentation, but just to fit those 25 issues in, we need to to have a lot of text on screen. The first four of the appeal issues first three here, and I won't go through them word for word, but the first three criteria essentially are that the commission improperly construed laws relating to compliance with the physical environmental constraints criteria in Chapter 18, 310.050. The next few appeal points get to the development standards for hillside lands in 18, 310.090. And then again, the next three also get to the development standard for hillside lands in 18, 310.090. The next few speak to the driveway standards and variance to the driveway standards and how the proposal was addressed in terms of variance criteria. Whether the variance was self-imposed, then looking at the requirements for tree removal permits and tree protection, objecting to the Planning Commission's conclusory findings, and questioning the condition requiring compliance with fire department requirements when it was not, in the appellant's opinion, demonstrated that that condition was feasible. Typically, when you see appeal points, you'll see a follow-up from the appellants at least 10 days prior to the hearing, kind of providing written argument which embellishes those appeal points. In this instance, we received 36-page written argument submittal on Friday, June 13th, last Friday, when the code clearly says in 18.51060 I5A that written argument shall be submitted no less than 10 days prior to the council's consideration of the appeal, and that was made clear in the mailed notice which went to the appellants and all parties, saying that written arguments had to be received by the planning department on or before 4:30 p.m. on June 6th. So the council is going to need to settle the record tonight as a kind of a preliminary matter. Staff's recommendation is because the written argument submittals were not timely received, they should be rejected, not included in the record, and not considered in the planning or in the council's decision, as they were not timely provided as required by code. Brandon had alluded to, but just to remind you, the code does specifically say the council shall not re-examine issues of fact and shall limit its review to determining whether there's substantial evidence to support the findings of the commission or determine if errors in law were committed. Review is supposed to be limited to those issues clearly and distinctly set forth, and no issue may be raised on appeal that was not raised before the commission with sufficient specificity to enable the commission and the parties to respond. So the 25 appeal issues before you are somewhat general, and again, we're not fully developed through more detailed written argument submittals. In staff's assessment, not all of those grounds, or all of those grounds, or nearly all of those grounds suggest the Planning Commission generally misconstrued criteria and standards, and they put the council in a position to re-examine the record to fill in details. That's precisely what the code, as I read, says that the council is not to do in the procedural guidance provided here on screen. As an appeal on the record, the council is to consider the grounds for appeal, determine whether there's evidence to support the Planning Commission decision, or whether the commission committed procedural errors in reaching their decision. The council communication provided in your packet looks at the record and addresses each of the grounds for appeal in terms of how it was addressed in the application submittal, what the applicable code is, and how the Planning Commission reached their decision relying on those facts in the record. In staff's view, it's clear that there was substantial evidence in the record relied upon by the commission supporting their decision with regard to each point of appeal, and that no procedural errors occurred as detailed at length in the council communication. On that basis, we recommend that the council reject the appeal on all counts, affirm the commission's decision, and adopt findings which reject the appellant's written arguments which were not timely submitted, and incorporate the commission findings into findings for the council. Given the number of appeal points and that they've been addressed in detail in the council communication, we weren't going to go over them individually, but if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them.
Questions of staff? Brandon, did you have?
I was going to note before the council hears from the appellant and the applicants that I would request that as this is a quasi-judicial land use hearing, that the mayor requests that the council disclose any ex parte contacts or any conflict of interest that may be party to that.
Yes, and so we have that as an item when we've moved the public hearing forward. Did you want to do that beforehand? No. I understand the recommendation regarding the council making a determination about the appeal hearing statement. Is there a particular time in this process? I don't think we've had that issue before. Is there a particular time in this process that we would do that?
You know, the mayor, you're referencing the issue that we received a statement following the 10-day prior to deadline. This is the first time that this has come before council or staff in the 17 years since the appeal process had been stipulated in our code that we did not receive a timely submittal. And so prior to making a deliberation on the merits of the appeal, grounds of appeal, I think it would be prudent, even prior to the appellant speaking, as to what you will consider as far as statements for consideration this evening. The question before you is that you received a appeal request from May 2nd that enumerates 25 items. On June 13th, we did forward the information to the city council that was provided by the appellant in full, with the recommendation from staff that because it was submitted after the deadline, it's not admissible. But again, that's a recommendation from staff. As the decision-making body of the city, it's incumbent upon the council to make that determination. So you do have the opportunity to make that determination. The appellant would likely speak on a procedural matter to request that the council consider it and provide you reasons for that. And with that in mind, it may be valuable to hear any procedural comments from the appellant. The concern is if the appellant's oral testimony summarizes comments that were not included in what you ultimately determined to be part of the record. So I could turn it over to the legal department and Johan to enumerate if that didn't provide clarity to council.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Brandon. Yeah, so I did, receive notice of this issue, and I agree with staff that the code is pretty clear that oral argument on the appeal, well, I first should say written arguments shall be submitted no less than 10 days prior to the council consideration of the appeal. I think that is extremely cut and dry. It also states that written and oral arguments, differentiating between the two, on the appeal should be limited to those issues clearly and distinctly set forth in the notice of appeal. And then finally, that oral argument shall be confined to the substance of the written argument. So in this case, obviously the appellant will be provided his 10 minutes of oral argument because he provided notice of appeal, but his oral argument should be confined to the substance of that writing, as that was the only timely filing. There is, in the beginning of that oral argument, section 5A, it differentiates that's both 10 minutes for the applicant, 10 minutes for the appellant if different, and then 3 minutes for any other party, indicating that this rule applies to all parties. I understand the concern there. I'll also just mention that, the term party is not meant to solely apply to third parties, which I think is part of the argument of the appellant here as to why it wouldn't apply, but the code makes it a distinction that there is a notice of appeal and then a separate written argument from all parties to the appeal. So that's our potential written argument. The code also makes it clear that neither written argument nor oral argument is necessary, as this is an appeal on the record. So the idea that one could show up last minute with 100 pages for you guys to read is not really found in the code. And then I will note, I did take a look at the notice that was provided to the appellant and the applicant, and I noticed the exact same language from the code with this slight change that written arguments shall be received in the planning department on or before 4:30 p.m. on June 6, 2025. So for example, if attorney for the applicant would not have submitted his timely written arguments, which he did, he would not have been permitted oral argument at all because he had no written submissions to this body. And I believe that's it. I can answer any other questions if they come up.
I think the biggest question is there's a request that we address whether this council will allow those late submitted comments. Where would you put that in the overall flow of this process tonight?
Yeah, I would put the settlement on the record before either
Before
party
either of
speaks.
them
Yeah,
speak.
because the other issue, and just as a practical matter, is it really provides a disadvantage for the applicant in this case, having not received those arguments, those written arguments on a timely fashion. They haven't had time to. I don't know when they received it. I know we forwarded it, I think on Monday when we, got it, but I don't know when they received it. But they've had essentially a day to review and prepare. So I imagine their oral arguments stick to what was in the record.
Okay. So let's go ahead and start to move through the formal process of the hearing. And we will take that question up after we ask for ex parte conflicts or contacts. The public hearing is now open for planning action number PA Appeal 2025-0021, an appeal on the record of the Planning Commission's approval of planning action number PA T2 2024-00053, a request for a physical and environmental constraints review permit to construct a single-family residence on hillside lands with severe constraints, an exception to the development standards for hillside lands, a tree removal permit to remove 74 trees, and a variance to the Flag Drive standards. This is an appeal on the record of a Type 2 land use procedure. It is a quasi-judicial land use proceeding and requires the observance of procedural formalities. The council must take a few moments to cover some preliminary matters and required statements. The applicant and appellants are each allowed a total of 10 minutes to summarize their written arguments to the City Council. The applicant is afforded 5 minutes for rebuttal. In the case of this appeal, no additional written comments were received from other individuals, and as such, public testimony is limited to the appellant and applicant. When recognized by the presiding officer, please come forward to the podium, give your name, and summarize your arguments. Councilors may ask questions of staff and participants without affecting time limits. Do any members of the council wish to abstain, declare a conflict of interest, or report any ex parte contact on this matter? This appeal on the record will be processed on the record according to AMC 18.5.1.060.1. The appeal request included the required form and a 6-page letter prepared by the appellant's attorney, Zach P. Middage of Hutchinson Cox, listing 25 points of appeal. These 25 grounds for appeal, A through Y, are detailed fully in the appeal submittal and will be displayed at the hearing as part of planning staff's presentation. This appeal on the record is limited to these grounds for appeal, which were clearly and distinctly identified in the appeal request. As provided in AMC 18.5.1.060.1.5.b, in their review, the council shall not re-examine issues of fact and shall limit its review to determining whether there is substantial evidence to support the findings of the Planning Commission or to determining if errors in law were committed by the Commission. Review shall in any event be limited to those issues clearly and distinctly set forth in the notice of appeal. City Recorder, do we have any written challenges to members of this hearing body for bias, prejudgment, or conflict of interest?
No.
Thank you. So we have received the staff report. Are there any questions of staff at this point? Okay. So this is where we will take up the question of the late filed hearing statement. Councilor Bloom.
I'm happy to make a motion.
Are there any final questions regarding the procedural element that we're here to discuss? No? Okay. Councilor Bloom?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I move to disallow the appellant's written arguments submittals, which were not timely submitted, and exclude them from the record and from consideration by the council tonight.
No, sir. Go ahead.
Second? Was there, I thought.
Yes. Go ahead.
Yes, 18.5.1 is very clear. If there is any desire by this council to review that ordinance, I think that that's an appropriate conversation to have. But at this time, the ordinance is clear, and I think that it would be inappropriate to allow an exception tonight. Furthermore, I personally did not review or read that written submittal. I did not want it to bias this conversation, and given that it was submitted late, I thought it would be inappropriate. So I just wanted to put that on the record as well.
Councilor Dale?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say I concur that the code is unambiguous, and there is clear precedent that's been set and no reason to change it.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Sherrill?
Can we repeat the motion? So I want to make sure that I'm supporting the right thing.
Yeah, happily. I move to disallow the appellant's written argument submittals which were not timely submitted and exclude them from the record and from consideration by the council tonight.
Yes.
Dale?
Yes.
Bloom?
Yes.
Kaplan?
Yes.
Duquesne?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Okay. We move on now to the appellant's presentation. Appellants Leonard Eisenberg, Kent McLaughlin, and Pamela McLaughlin, would you and/or your legal counsel please come forward to the podium, state your name, and summarize your appeal arguments. You have a total of 10 minutes.
Good evening, councilors and Mayor Graham. Thank you for the opportunity. I just want to start out. My name is Liam Sherlock. I'm from Eugene. I'm standing in for Mr. Mickey this evening as he is scheduling conflicts, but we are the firm representing the appellants in this matter. For the record, I need to say that we vehemently disagree with the city council attorney and the staff's determination that this was untimely. The requirement for the 10-day limit, I think, is as laid out in your own ordinance, is a standing barrier for people who have participated in the proceedings below but did not appeal. The way the code reads, it is unnecessary for the applicant or appellant who has already established standing by having submitted timely appeal statement, which enumerated all of the appeal points, and therefore has standing. What the 10-day requirement is to avoid the last-minute drop by participants who did not actually appeal the original decision by the Planning Commission. And so that is, it doesn't really make sense, because I can sit here tonight and articulate the same points that are in our written statement. And so why would you allow oral argument but disallow written argument when the whole point is for the council to make an informed decision based on the errors that were unfortunately committed by the commission, the Planning Commission, in its decision-making process? It's undisputed that the appellants have timely participated and engaged in the appeal process as accordance to the court, in accordance with the ordinance. But under staff's interpretation, participants who have filed, only participants who have filed, if anybody files an argument within the 10 days, then they're disallowed from proceeding in oral argument. And obviously that's not the case here tonight because I'm standing before you. So I just want to, for the record, we're objecting to the council's decision on the denial of the written statements. It is not in accordance with, I think, the Oregon land use scheme for encouraging public participation and a full and fully vetted process for making a determination whether there were errors of law or lack of substantial evidence. So with that, I am going to quickly address the key issues that we think that are in error in the decision. Number one, the Planning Commission erred by allowing a driveway grade for a new driveway to exceed 20%, which is contrary to 18.4.3.080 D8. The city's vehicle design standards say for grades for driveways shall not exceed 20% for any portion of the driveway. And it's undisputed, as a matter of fact, that the proposed driveway will exceed this 20% grade along its entire length. And indeed, the applicant is stating that the average grade is 23%. As the proposed development clearly exceeds this minimum grade, it cannot be, the planning's decision was in error. In addition to the 20% limit on new driveway grades, section 18.5.060F imposes a 15% grade on flag driveways, which this is, and which is proposed, and it imposes a maximum limit of 18% for any variance to this standard. It states flag drives shall not exceed a maximum grade of 15%, and variances may be graded for drive grades in excess of 15%, but no greater than 18%. And this is provided for driveways that do not exceed 200 feet, which this also does. The application violates this criterion by proposing a flag drive with an admitted 23% grade, which is substantially higher than the maximum grade allowed without a variance, and the maximum variance that can be allowed under this code. So that is an essential error by the commission in making that finding, which didn't really even address the variance provision. And it just made reference to a 1992 memo from a retired planning director, but that memo itself said it couldn't predict what this council would do if this issue ever came up. Moreover, a memo from a planning director is not determinative of what this council can or cannot do on its own ordinance. It's at best advisory, but it certainly isn't adherence with the actual law that the city council and the planning commission had to apply, and the commission just ignored it. The other numerically imprecise finding by the commission under the clear and objective standards is whether or not when considering whether a subject parcel was created in compliance with the hillside regulations, the commission finds that it this proposal does not have a building area of less than 35% when considering to minimize broader disturbance by limiting development to an area near the driveway as possible. Well, this finding by the city council, by the planning commission, both misconstrues the law and the facts, and was not supported by substantial evidence, because there's clearly, as admitted by the applicant himself or themselves, areas within this building parcel, the lot, that are less than 35%. And the proposal is proposing to build on areas that are greater than 35%, despite the fact that there are areas that are less than 35% that could be built on. But what the commission did in its finding is improperly added terms to the exception language that is allowed, but the exception language only applies to areas where there's no less than 35% ground. But the planning commission improperly added terms by working way around this problem by saying that there's considering the need to minimize broader disturbance by limiting development of the site to an area as near the driveway as possible. But the planning commission doesn't have the authority to expand the exception language in this code provision by adding additional terms that are not included in the actual language. But it did. Only the city council, this council, has the authority to expand upon the, and through a legislative process, not a quasi-judicial process, which this is, the definition or the interpretation of that code provision. So the 35% development mandate that says existing parcels without adequate building areas shall be considered buildable for only one single-family dwelling, and not additional terracing for other portions of the proposed application. Here, in other words, you can only build, if it's 35% or greater, you can only build the house and the supporting parking facility. But here they've expanded that significantly. I mean, the design of the house is beautiful. They obviously have a good architect, but that doesn't allow for violating the code in terms of what you can and can't do on a compromised hillside like this with slopes that are at or greater than 35%, where you have portions of that parcel that are less than 35%. That's where you have to build if they exist. That has not occurred here. The fire hazard findings by the council are by the commission are inadequate. The applicant is supposed to take all reasonable steps to reduce adverse impacts on the environment. The driveway in this instance, as noted, is in excess of 23%, which exceeds both the 10% maximum specified by the Oregon Fire Code, as well as the 18% maximum that can be allowed under a variance under the city's ordinance. Since the property cannot really be accessed by fire equipment, I mean, there's no way for a turnaround. There's no allowance for a bit backing up and then turning the fire trucks around, and they can't really back down a hillside this steep. The fire hydrant that has been noted by the commission is 600 feet away. It requires pumping to get up to it. If there was a fire in this area, is a good bet that the utilities would shut down the power lines and disallow any electrical use of water pumps. And the pool that they're proposing as a backup is not really allowed under the code for a steep hillside like this, because it's requiring an expanded footprint that is not allowed. And with that, I will conclude and urge the council to deny the application as inadequate.
Thank you. And now we have the applicant's presentation. Owner Brian DeBoer, applicant architect Carlos Delgado, and or your legal counsel, please come forward to the podium, state your name, and summarize your argument relating to the grounds of appeal. You have a total of 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Chris Hearn, 515 East Main Street here in Ashland, and I am pleased to represent the applicants, Brian and Stephanie DeBoer. This home at 231 Granite Street they purchased the lot a year or so ago, and they're going to build a home there for their daughter's family. They met with the city. They have Carlos Delgado, a well-known local architect who produced, as Mr. Sherlock said, a beautiful structure. This was taken through the planning process with excruciating detail, with professional arborists involved, with geotechnical engineers involved, with civil engineers involved, and a planning consultant, and consultation with the city departments, including the fire department. And the application was submitted and revised a couple of times to take out any of the exceptions that were necessary by meeting the heights of retaining walls, for example, and the step backs necessary for the structure to meet certain aspects of the hillside development standards that would apply without requesting exceptions. I think, as your staff said, a very kind of critical core point to remember in this application is that this lot was created with city approval of the Planning Commission in 1996. It was a buildable lot at that time, zoned for residential use. It was platted by the city with a signature of the Planning Commission, and it was then shown, and ever since has been, on the city's buildable lands inventory. This is a developable lot served by historic, long pre-existing driveway. And that changes things because what you have there is a pre-existing legal non-conforming use. The neighbors who are complaining and challenging this application are the neighbors over whose property the historic easement, access easement or driveway granted by their predecessors, their prior owners, to the prior owners of the DeBoers. This was the roadway that was designated and approved by the city as access to that buildable, pre-existing legal lot. To say that the driveway is now too steep, no home can be built, and no variance can be applied for is to basically take that lot and make it unbuildable and essentially valueless. Beyond that, and that's critical because the standards that were enunciated and reviewed are for a new driveway, and this is a long historic existing driveway. In fact, in the easement document itself, which is part of the record, it recites that there was a home at the end of this driveway on the parcel historically. Even though there's currently no record of that, it says it in the easement agreement itself. So this is a prior non-conforming legal use. As far as we disagree with the fact that with the assertion that this cannot be subject to a variance. It's a legal existing lot. It doesn't require a new driveway. It requires the old driveway be recognized as guaranteeing access to this parcel. The Planning Commission went over at length through discussion and public testimony the criteria for a variance, and it was found that there was the necessity of the variance was not self-imposed, that it was the least necessary to allow access to the parcel, and there's a huge public benefit being offered here, and that is this very important ditch trail connection that the applicant is offering as a condition of approval, which satisfies a portion of the city's comprehensive plan, and that's the trails map that the council adopted in February of 2024. And it has, as property number 11, this property designated, but not the whole property, just for this trail easement connection. So that is a public benefit in exchange for the variance that's being offered to the public. I didn't read the 36 pages of single-spaced, late submitted argument that was submitted by the appellants and emailed to me sometime yesterday by staff, but I didn't see it till today. Based on, well, first of all, as staff told you, the commission is here to see if the council is to see if the planning commission committed legal error, which we contend it did not, or whether it's substantial in the evidence in the record does not support the findings of council, which we believe and it does. I would say, however, and have discussed with applicant the fact that the Planning Commission adopted what's called conclusory findings, meaning they have a narrative findings over the criteria and how those criteria were met. Applicant would support a remand by the council, not to reopen the public record or the public hearing, but to allow the council to adopt specific findings rather than conclusory findings, and we would be willing to extend the 120-day rule for city to make a final decision by whatever amount it takes to, promptly as possible, have the Planning Commission review its findings, make more detailed rather than conclusive findings, and address these issues in case there's an appeal to LUBA, and perhaps demonstrate to the appellants that all the criterion are met or can be met through feasible conditions of approval. Finally, and I'm guessing or hoping that you read our written submittals, which were timely submitted, when I try to cover this fairly vast amount of criteria, a number of important points, with a very limited time I have, 3 minutes left. I'd really just like to say that we believe, we know that the Planning Commission spent a lot of time listening to members of the public. At the first public hearing, the vast majority of people that appeared and spoke We're primarily concerned about this trail segment, this important trail connection for the ditch trail. As soon as they learned that the applicant was willing and able, in fact, we submitted into the record a proposed ready-to-sign easement, granting the city a perpetual easement for this trail connection, which is so important to the community. That's in the record, and that's what most people were concerned about. The two property owners, whose property, one of whom at least is whose property, the record easement from the 90s traverses. I understand they don't want development in the area, but this is a legal lot, and it has to be developed for residential purposes for at least one home in order to comply with its non-existing or its pre-existing non-conforming use status, which we believe is a very important point when considering the criteria. The house is situated on the portion of the lot that will have the least effect on trees and require the least excavation. It's positioned right next to where the driveway comes up and enters the property. 80% of the site will not be touched. It will not be graded. It's 2.18 acres in size. Only a very small amount of the 20%, less than 20% of that 2.1 acres will be touched, or any tree removals will really be actually understory fuel reduction of small caliber trees. There are a number of trees removed, and applicant, where possible, reduced the number of mature notable trees that had to be cut, and met all criteria. And we respectfully request that under the circumstances that the council uphold and affirm the condition of the decision of its planning commission. And with a footnote, however, if the council sees a way to, well, if the council is willing, the code provides that council may remand a decision like this back to the planning commission. And in this case, applicant would request that the council, in fact, remand the decision back, not to reopen the public hearing, but for the council to, or for this, I'm sorry, for the planning commission to make more detailed, specific findings as to each of the applicable standards and code criteria, so that if we're forced to defend this decision at LUBA, there won't be the ongoing and repeated. Well, basically, what we had access to was the notice of appeal, and it said that basically set forth each of the major criteria and said inadequate findings and not based on substantial evidence. We disagree. It is based on substantial evidence, but we believe specific findings would be helpful to everybody. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. The city did not receive written comments on the points of appeal in advance of this appeal hearing from other parties of record from the initial land use hearing, PA-T2-2024-00053, and as such, other than the applicants and appellants, there are not any other individuals eligible to testify. Does the council have any questions of staff, or does the staff have any matter they wish to respond to? Councilor Hanson.
Thank you, Mayor. Derek, Brandon, we just heard from DeBoer's council that they're requesting that we remand this back to the Planning Commission. I don't see that option in our packet, of course. I'm just curious if you can expand on that, or if you have any comment on that.
So my comment on that would be remanding it to the Planning Commission does necessitate the applicant provide to the city an extension of the 120 days. The decision has to be rendered by the city by July 15th at your next council meeting. However, if the applicant provides us an extension of, essentially 60 days to schedule it before the Planning Commission, have the Planning Commission's review the findings as recommended to adopt specific findings addressing each of the specific criteria in lieu of the conclusionary findings, I think that could be done. It would require a motion of this body to remand it to the Planning Commission contingent upon receipt of an extension of the 120 days. And at that point, the adoption of the Planning Commission's findings would, I believe, be appealable yet again to this body and could come back before you with modified findings, assuming that an appeal was timely filed.
Yeah, one more. Thank you for that. And if we did not remand back to Planning Commission, would both parties have, for lack of a better phrase, more work if there was an appeal to LUBA, or is there in staff and city's best interest to remand this back to Planning Commission?
Yeah, I can't really answer on behalf of either the applicant or the appellant as to how their case would play out before LUBA, as that's a separate body. I think from the applicant's presentation and request, they believe substantiating the findings to address the criteria would allow them to present an application of findings before LUBA that were more comprehensive. The appellant obviously has already enumerated a number of what they have contested are errors in the existing findings that would likely be the basis of a LUBA appeal, both of which are predicated on this council making a decision to affirm the Planning Commission's decision.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Brandon, can you speak to the question of the pre-existing use of the driveway and what we've heard this evening about the 18% max for variances? Can you speak to help us understand how this pre-existing use works with our existing code?
As was presented to the Planning Commission as part of their review, the portion of the driveway is existed in that area prior to the adoption of our hillside ordinance. The portion of the drive that would be newly improved by the applicant in order to access the proposed house is on the flag drive area that was platted in 1996 as part of the lot to be served, with the expectation that that flag drive would be the location of the driveway. The application that was presented showed that given the existing slopes of that natural area where the driveway would be located, the maximum amount of slope that they could achieve would exceed the 18% provided for as a hillside flag drive standard. Under our land use code, or any land use code, an applicant can apply for a variance to a standard, and as such, part of their proposal was in recognition that it could not comply with the type 1 planning action for approval of a driveway between up to 18%, and as such, the staff advertised it as a type 2 planning action in order for the Planning Commission to make that review as it exceeded the 18% for a flag drive. And
Thank you. Question?
Yeah.
Councilor Bloom.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just wondering, and maybe I missed it in the process here, were we still allowed to ask questions of the appellant or the applicant? Or is that time passed at this point?
You know, I believe that would have been at the conclusion of their testimony.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I would note, though, that the appellant has it, no, sorry, there's an opportunity to rebut, correct?
Yeah, so the applicant has an opportunity to rebut. The public hearing is still open through that, so it would be council's discretion, I think, at this point.
Councilor Dale?
Thank you. Brandon, could you restate, if it was remanded back to the Planning Commission, what it would be contingent upon based on what the applicant's attorney was requesting?
The applicant's attorney was requesting that the city council direct the application back to the planning commission with the expectation to review and revise their adopted findings and not open the record to accept new testimony, but review the existing record in order to enumerate findings that are specific to each of those criteria of approval. Were that to occur, the Planning Commission would review the existing findings, review the record, and look at preparing findings that were a revision to the prior approval. Not changing the approval, changing the findings that approved it. And that document, once approved by the Planning Commission, would become part of the record, and therefore, if appealed, would come back, that document would be the final findings and conclusions of law by the Planning Commission. Am I answering your question?
You are, I just couldn't type in my head fast enough to get that.
And I can just add, he did say contingent upon the applicant granting an extension of time for 60 days, which I think would allow us to bring this before the Planning Commission on August 12th.
Is 60 days or was it 120?
What's the 60-day extension to the 120-day rule?
Okay.
Councilor Bloom?
Yeah, quickly, and if we were deciding to approve this and accept the, affirm the Planning Commission's decision, and this was appealed to LUBA, that is the final step. This won't come back, and there won't be other opportunities to change.
The City Council is the final decision maker for the city, and so any decision of the Planning Commission for a Type 2 action can be appealed to the City Council. So if this body remands it to the Planning Commission for revision of findings, and Planning Commission completes a revision to those findings, that and adopts new findings, that adoption could be appealed to this body, and then a decision you make is appealable to the Land Use Board of Appeals.
Right, and just to kind of build on that, after LUBA makes their determination, that's it.
Their determination often will be remanding it back to the city to resolve
Right.
certain issues.
And essentially, the request from the applicant is to proactively address that.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilor Kaplan?
Yeah, thanks, Brandon and Derek. So does the Planning Commission typically issue conclusory findings rather than detailed specific findings as is requested by the applicant? I'm wondering, why is this even necessary? Or is if LUBA, or if it's if it's clearer presentation, why do we even bother with conclusory findings rather than detailed specific findings so that, it serves a purpose? What's our practice?
I believe that our practice largely is to identify the criteria of approval that were subject of discussion at the Planning Commission and elucidate the discussion that the Planning Commission had about those items in order to present findings for them to declare that that is indeed the decision that they made. I think that, with all things, with more time and effort, you can substantiate findings in much more detail. And I think that's what the applicant might be asking the council to remand them to the Planning Commission so that they can review the full record as exists and pull more information out to address the questions that the appellant identified in their submittals. And I guess I can't answer your question in terms of conclusionary versus specific. I think in large part the attempt is to do specific findings, but they may appear conclusionary if they don't provide every bit of detail that could be pulled out of the record.
Great, thank you. Councilor Bloom?
Yes, thank you. Since this is quasi-judicial, I think that it's important that if we were to make a motion to that effect, that we get it right. I was wondering if you could restate the request from the applicant.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I could restate it as the applicant suggested. The intention, however, would be that the applicant provide an extension to the 120-day rule to allow the Planning Commission to adopt specific findings to address issues to the appeal. on the record without reopening the public hearing and adopt specific findings.
Is that
It's about how I remember it, yeah.
okay? And legal?
Yeah, and then he would just, yeah, we would need, that motion would be contingent upon the applicant providing a 60-day extension, because I believe he is the one who has that.
So it's important to be clear, contingent on.
Yeah, I think the salient term to use would be that the city council remands to the planning commission the adoption of findings for revisions to the findings based on the record without reopening the public hearing.
And just a follow-up question to that, it also includes affirming the decision of the Planning Commission or just remanding back?
Yeah, I think if the council wanted to
It's one or
provide
the other.
guidance on that, that would be.
Oh, okay. Good. Any further questions of staff? Okay. Owner Brian DeBoer, applicant Carlos Delgado, and/or your legal counsel, please come forward to the podium and provide any rebuttal arguments you may have. You have up to 5 minutes.
Mayor, members of the council, I'm still Chris Cern, 515 East Main Street for the record. This is kind of odd kind of process because I'm rebutting, but I was also the last one to speak. So I'll use that time to address what staff said. The applicant is willing to grant an extension to the 120-day rule for purposes of city to make a final decision, including any local appeals. So we'll provide that. If the planning commission, if the city council will remand it not to reopen the public record, but so that the commission itself can adopt more specific findings. They have that information at their disposal. It's just the findings they adopted are labeled as conclusory, quote unquote, findings. And so as staff understands, they can go through then each of the criteria and address the facts and findings associated with those criteria and how they're met. And if there are any questions beyond that, if staff has any questions or the council.
Councilor Dale?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Hearn. Is that what your client wishes?
I beg your pardon, sir?
Is that what your client wishes?
Yes, my understanding is so, yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, I will close the public hearing. The hearing and the record are now closed. Council, what is your pleasure with this issue and decision? Councilor Dale?
Mayor, I'm ready to make a motion.
Please do.
I move to remand planning application PA-T2-2024-00053 to the Ashland Planning Commission, contingent on the applicant providing an extension to the 120-day rule in order to adopt specific findings without reopening the public record.
Second.
Councilor Dale?
Thank you. Yes, I just would like to say that I was willing. I didn't personally did not see any errors of law committed by our or any other erroneous issues with our planning department or our staff. But given that the applicant is willing to proceed with this course of action, I think it lends itself to additional review, and hopefully that will give an appellant some opportunity. But I think that this is what the applicant wants, and so I'm happy to make this motion.
Councilor Dale, or Bloom?
No, please.
Oh, Councilor Sher, were you the second?
Yes, yeah. thank you.
Councilor Sherrill.
Yeah, I was just going to say, similar, I would fully support this. I think it does still qualify for needed housing, regardless of the size and square footage that was brought into question. I think that with conditions of approval and variances, this application will hopefully move forward, and I look forward to supporting it if I see it again.
Councilor Hanson.
Thank you, Mayor. I mean, I could make an amendment to go ahead and try to further affirm the decision of the Planning Commission and also remand it back. I don't think I need to, but somebody else might. So I'm happy with this process. I love all the community engagement, and I wish the applicant the best of luck. And I too don't see any errors here. And if this is what the applicant wants, then let it happen. Thank you.
Councilor Kaplan.
Yeah, I'd like to offer a motion to amend the motion to affirm the Planning Commission's decision as well as remanding.
Second that.
Councilor Kaplan.
Yeah, I think it's I'd like to just make this, to do that in order to, so it's crystal clear that this council is doing that, is affirming it, is not opening up, is not questioning the Planning Commission's decisions, but is remanding it only for the purpose of clarifying and making more specific the detailed record.
Councilor Dale.
No, I appreciate Councilor Kaplan doing that, and that is putting that on the record in just being crystal clear with that. That's important. Thank you for adding that.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Hanson,
Yes.
Duquesne,
Yes.
Kaplan,
Yes.
Bloom,
Yes.
Dale,
Yes.
Sherrill.
Yes.
I have a question for the council in terms of whether it is useful to put a specific date of the extension. Staff mentioned 60 days, but I didn't hear that particular detail in the motion. We extended the 120-day deadline, but I don't believe I heard that there was a specific amount of that extension.
If I may, Mayor, I'm going to defer to Brandon and Derek, but I believe that the date is contingent on when the application is submitted for the extension. Is that how that would work, or can you add some context to that?
Can I just suggest that you leave it non-specific? The applicants mentioned that they were willing to add time to allow for the potential for another appeal, and I think we can work that out.
That's plenty.
Okay.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yep.
Any further discussion on the main motion? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Dale,
Yes.
Bloom,
Yes.
Kaplan,
Yes.
Duquesne,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Sherrill.
Yes.
Thank you. We are now to the second reading of Ordinance 3265, adopting the 2025 Economic Opportunity Analysis.
Mayor and Council, Director Goldman is here for the second reading of the EOA. This was presented for first reading at our last meeting, and tonight we need a final motion to adopt it, and Director Goldman can answer any questions.
Are there questions of staff? Okay, the floor is open for a motion. Councilor Bloom?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve second reading of ordinance number 3265, titled An Ordinance Adopting the 2025 Economic Opportunities Analysis as a Technical Support Document to the Economy Element of the City of Ashland's Comprehensive Plan, and to approve the accompanying findings of fact and conclusions of law.
Councilor Bloom?
No, the second reading, please.
Councilor Kaplan?
Yeah, same, second reading.
Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Kaplan,
Yes.
Duquesne,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Sherrill,
Yes.
Dale,
Yes.
Bloom.
Yes.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and take a break. We will report back at 7:50 by that clock. Thank you. We are reconvening. Thank you. And we come back to second reading of Ordinance 3264, creating Section 13.40 of the Ashland Municipal Code, establishing recreational immunity protections.
All right, Council, this ordinance was presented as a second reading tonight. The first reading was also on June 3rd. And tonight we need a final motion to adopt it. And City Attorney Piedela is here to answer any questions.
Questions? Okay, the floor is open for a motion. Councilor Bloom?
Yes, I move to approve second reading of Ordinance 3264 as presented.
Councilor Bloom?
No comment.
Councilor Hanson?
No, just another necessary housekeeping measure to reduce our city's liability and make sure that our citizens know that that we are taking the proactive measures to open up our parks and open spaces and have the protection of recreational immunity. So I thank you, Johan and staff, for making this resolution, and I support it.
Further discussion? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Hanson,
Yes.
Kaplan,
Yes.
Bloom,
Yes.
Dale,
Yes.
Sherrill,
Yes.
Duquesne.
Yes.
And now we are to a resolution of the City of Ashland clarifying certain conditions of employment for management, confidential, and non-represented employees.
Mayor and Council, before you, you have a management resolution, which encompasses about 90 of our employees at the city. There has been a lot of information going around, so I wanted to kind of level set before I let Director Taylor take over. So there was an article posted on June 15th in the Ashland Chronicle titled "Big Pay Raises for Top Ashland Staff." I have asked Mr. David Runkle to correct or retract this article. His response was because he published one in May with the same theme, and we did not request a retraction, that it's perhaps not warranted. But I thought it important to put correct information out there. It's alluded to that this only applies to top staff or high-level officials. That's incorrect. 47% of the employees covered under this management resolution are non-supervisory. There's another statement that we all get $20,000 to $40,000 in pay raises. I can only assume this was an assumption made by placing everyone at the top step in the salary schedule presented in Appendix A. This is factually wrong. As you have noted in the management resolution and the council communication, the proposal is to put them at the closest step without harming them, as presented in the comp and class that was done earlier and presented earlier this year. If it is a minimal raise below 2.5, then they're moved to the next step to ensure pay equity across the board. So the maximum increase anyone would receive, being significantly underpaid on market, would be $13,000 for the year and a minimum raise of $62 for the year. So it does vary by position, as the comp and class was looked at by position, and there are different markets for each position. So the total amount of salaries, based on current staffing, the impact is about $394,000 above our 2% that we had as a placeholder in our budget. So if you remember, we adopted the budget before we finalized the comp and class, as well as any of our union negotiations. So there's going to need to be some adjustments for this biennium to accommodate those. If you do it off of our FTE count, which is not full at the moment, is about 500,000. So I am using this example, and I think that's a welcome example to use. So currently I make about 196,000. I would move to 201,000, which is 4 steps away from the top step, which would equal to about a 20,000 pay raise if you move me to that step. But I would not be moved to the top step. I would be moved to step 4 of 8. That is what this process would do. That is the same for all of our department heads, with a max increase of 3% for any of them. Some other information I think it's important to note, we are recommending that Mercy Flights be included for all staff. The majority of our staff have this benefit, and at $75 a year per employee, it's de minimis to have pay parity and benefit parity across the board. The longevity bonuses that are referenced have been in place for 3 years now. Some union contracts have had them longer. So as mentioned before, this management resolution encompasses all employees who are not represented by a union. So 99 employees or 70 positions, as we have some positions that have more than one person in them. This information is found on our website, so all of our pay scales, including the management resolution, previously can be found under the Human Resources website. And I think it's also important to note that we are following the direction of the consultant who did our salary schedule, comparing our 5 above and 5 below cities and population, as well as putting in some like jurisdictions, as we are unique in that we have an electric department and a water department and wastewater, et cetera. Not every city has that. Now, why we picked the 5 and above and 5 below, as those are the jurisdictions that we are compared against during labor arbitration. So those are most like us in terms of population and service delivery. So we have wanted to be a competitive jurisdiction in terms of recruitment and retention. So we want to be in the middle, which is what many jurisdictions want, so the 50th percentile. We want to be an employer of choice within the Southern Oregon Valley and not lose employees to other jurisdictions while balancing the economic burden that this places on making sure that we fairly compensate employees. The last Common Class study that was conducted was in 2008 and took 2 years to implement. The salary schedules have only been adjusted with COLAs or no COLAs, depending on the year, since that time. Unrepresented employees have often foregone COLAs or taken smaller ones to ensure union negotiations were settled. Parks employees have also taken furlough days in the past and foregone raises altogether. This has resulted in the unrepresented group as well as union members falling behind as no market adjustments have been made. In 2021, city wages fell significantly below inflation impacts, where 2022 and 2023 inflation outpaced the city's COLAs by 2.5 and 3.7 percentage points respectively. And with that, I will hand it over to Director Taylor to answer any questions you may have about the management resolution.
Questions? Councilor Dale?
Yeah, just a quick question. Molly, if this resolution weren't on, but it was just if we were extending the COLA by 3%, what would be the difference in funding needs, and what would be the difference between the two?
If we did a 3%?
Yeah, with just current right now.
I would have to run the numbers. I don't have
Okay.
the 3%.
Thank you.
Sabrina, can you speak to the purpose of a Common Class study? I've been in these conversations. I know council asked for that for specific reasons, but I think it could help the public understand the process by which we have gotten to this evening and why we would undertake a study like that.
Sure. So a Common Class study looks at a few things. So they look at our job descriptions to ensure we're up to current standards and that we are placing jobs in a way that are similar to other like jurisdictions. And they look at our compensation, including our benefits, to ensure that we are on par with other jurisdictions. So you see adjustments around things like job titles, where our job titles have been outdated and are no longer appropriate. So updates to things like job titles, as well as a market look on, how we pay our staff in specific positions versus how other jurisdictions pay their staffs in specific positions. So kind of a one-for-one comparison. And that's why you pool so many jurisdictions in, because not every jurisdiction is going to offer the same services, and we have different professionals than many other jurisdictions. So making sure that we are adequately paying our staff to be competitive, to be able to recruit them and retain them. So for example, we've been unable to recruit a deputy public works director with our current pay scale for 5 years. It took multiple recruitments for HR and finance and city attorney. And a lot of that is due to the fact that we were significantly below market on many of those positions.
So I know that there's an assumption sometimes in the community that Ashland pays better than other jurisdictions. But the last time that we had a comp and class study done for the benefit of the public was how many years ago?
In 2008.
2008. So we have not done a formal look at this for 17 years. Right. So when we do a comp and class study, we would expect when that comes back out that there would need to be adjustments. Sure. That some of our people might be underpaid, some might be overpaid, and then that's what we're essentially looking at tonight, is how do we now take everybody and what they were being paid and get them into this new schedule.
Right. What happens over time is you have different industries within the same pay schedule. So you have IT in the same schedule as accounting, and those have different markets in terms of different values and expectations around pay. And so when they're in a group like this and you're only ever adjusting for COLAs, some where the market accelerates or they become more valuable become further and further behind market. And those positions become increasingly difficult to recruit. And some are slower with that. But we found across the board is to some extent everyone is either slightly below or a little more significantly below market. And so that's where that variation comes in that I've spoken of, where someone is getting a 13%, right, which is like $4,000 raise for the year, whatever, versus 62 for the year. So what this methodology will do is make that market correction by position, by placing them on the salary schedule for the market. And then we will have COLAs. And so what the city will need to do is, as the consultant has recommended, do many updates to the comp and class, not 17 years apart, to keep that market information fresh so we don't see that drifting of certain positions over time, because they're all going as a unit. And that's where you get claims like we have the highest paid tree trimmer in all of the state, right? Well, if you're part of a unit that moves significantly over time, maybe you are, but you're part of that unit, right? Where the comp and class makes that adjustment and puts you what is appropriate to your market. And so the city needs to consistently have an eye on that, because some people remain stagnant because their market is not moving as quickly. Some may accelerate more. But when we only make adjustments by COLA, which is quite frankly a lot easier than doing market research for each position every year, then we see that drift. And so this is our chance to correct that, put everyone where the industry states they should be. And then, in 3 or 4 years, we're going to need to do kind of a mini look to make sure that we're not drifting too far. And you may see some adjustments then. But the management resolution is full of more variety, I would say, than any other group within the city. So the other unions have very similar job descriptions. And I think, Molly, correct me if I'm wrong. So laborers, they're very similar in all their job descriptions. The linemen, very similar. Clerical, to some extent, very similar. So what we have in the management resolution is a large variation, everything from attorneys to accountants, right, to the wastewater supervisor. So there's a lot of different markets found within this particular group.
Councilor Kaplan?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. And Sabrina, you answered several of the points that I was going to ask about, so thanks in advance. And I won't repeat the questions and ask you to do it all over again. But I would just comment that we heard the consultant, had a long discussion with the consultant 4 weeks ago, and I think we're quite impressed with the depth of analysis. And I was personally quite thankful that we had that done because it had been such a long time since we did it, and we can get way out of whack. I'm thankful that we did that, and now we're seeing the application of that in this group of employees. My question really is this what we should expect for every single collective bargaining agreement now going forward? We've got 6 collective bargaining units in the city, and should we be expecting over the next period of time collective bargaining agreements that adjust to the comp and class study?
So the city's position is to try to use that data to get people to the market. Of course, when you're negotiating with a union, we only have so much control, right? So you will see something similar probably come forward for several of the unions that is very similar. So a movement to market and then COLAs after that. And there will probably be some variation by union because there's variation of the job. And those will not be so complicated because, like I said, they're utility worker 1, 2, and 3. They're kind of captured with a smaller amount of jobs in each of those unions. And so you will see similar probably in some. We've not finalized all of them yet.
But so the comp and class provides a framework, and then as you said, the negotiations in it could be higher or lower depending on the negotiations of
right.
Outcome. Right.
Yeah, and so the city brings their data to the table, and we've had a very strong kind of seat this time because we have fresh data to bring. Where before, the union brings their own data, right? And so it's the clashing of the comps when you're doing union negotiations. And so having this fresh data across the board for all employees has been very helpful to get a global view of what's going on with all of our employees and try to use that to ensure pay parity across the board and equalize the benefits that we offer our employees across the board.
Thanks.
Councilor Dale?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, Sabrina, I don't think I take issue with anything you said. I mean, it's all absolutely correct. I guess where I'm struggling a little bit though is that I appreciate that we're long overdue on a comp and class. Absolutely, I appreciate the fact that we want to absolutely compensate our staff that do an amazing job here. What I'm trying to reconcile, though, is the order in which we're doing things, because we just came through a pretty difficult budget where, we know it's budgeted here. What I'm thinking about is 27, 29. And is there a way that we could better incorporate this into kind of a forecasting, like we talked about during the budget committee? Because what I feel like is, this certainly is all on par with what we should be doing, but I don't know how it clicks in and what this looks like for the financial health of the city from a forecasting standpoint. Of course, we want to do that, but, and that's kind of, we were talking last night about the strategic plan, and that certainly plays into it. And that's kind of why I was, I'd seen this on the agenda, and it was trying to just kind of find that middle ground of saying, well, what is, I don't want to say a short term, but what is kind of a functional organizational overview combined with financial modeling, so that we know by doing this that we can feel confident that we're going in the right direction. Because I don't ever want to end up like we did, which is we were scrambling. I know we say with confidence it's in the budget now, but I believe it's this body's job to make sure that we're setting it up for who's in these chairs next. And so I just kind of, I'm hesitant, even though I agree with everything you said. That's something that gives me pause until I understand the math behind it.
Yeah, I think what's difficult is the timing on these are never ideal, right? So ideally, all of them would have been settled long before the budget process started, but that's just not how it's going. I will say that, I've gotten council direction to look at efficiencies and the structure of the organization, and I think we will see some changes as we implement some technology over the next few years where the workforce will change. But I think importantly, we need staff to provide the service. And while we want Ashland to be a great place to work, we also have to be competitive because staff will voluntarily leave the organization if we don't meet compensation. If we don't meet market rate. And so, it's balancing the need to retain and recruit staff to do very specialized jobs here, which we struggle to do, especially in our utilities, while having a long-term financial view. But it is 3 times more expensive to lose an employee and replace them than it is to retain them with this type of increase. And so, coming out of a time period of having a 24, 25% turnover rate down to a normal 8%, that is something that I want to retain, because when we don't have staff to provide the service and we're constantly recruiting, that is costing the city more money than it would be to provide adequate compensation.
Councilor Sherrill?
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple questions. You talked about the 5 up and the 5 down, and we have our comparators that are dedicated by arbitration. Is that decided by our consultant, or is that decided by some kind of state past practice?
State law.
Okay, and do you feel comfortable sharing who the comparators are that we use primarily for our management positions?
I'd have to pull do you have the report?
Okay, well, yeah, I guess if it's not easy to find, I'll just move on to a couple other.
Molly will look for it, won't we?
Okay, and then I want to fully support, fully support compensation and keeping good people. Like, we want a 10 out of 10 city, and we're going to have to pay 10 out of 10 to get that. Like, we get what we pay for. I don't think it's, the actual price. I think it's maybe the policy and how we got here. I mean, I feel privileged to have the inbox I have to understand what's going on, and I just kind of figured it out today. So my concern is that the people that don't have the same access, I think they're less worried about price and it's more about trust. And so I just want to make sure that we're not like jamming this through at the last minute when people don't quite understand it, and then we go into our next orders of business with a black eye and people don't trust us. So
I will say
that's what I'm
this
wrestling
comes
with.
up every 3 years, so this is a regular thing that's updated on a regular cycle. So I think a lot of the distrust is the misinformation that was spread through the Ashland Chronicle. And if that had been factual, we wouldn't see the kind of emails we're getting in our inbox, which is based off that information. And so the management resolution and the council communication, outlines the typical thing that we do. The significant change always with the management resolution is the COLAs, and this time we're adding mercy flights. Those are the only things that are really different in terms of compensation than from the last 3 years.
Yeah, I totally hear you, and I agree. I feel if we would have had the documents that we had today out in the public with more lead time, whatever came up that may have been a little bit misleading could have been trumped by official documents coming from the city. That's kind of my question there. And then I think the last one would have to do with that $75 annual mercy fee seems very affordable. Is there a reason that we don't use our own local ASA for ground transportation?
So we do if you're within city limits.
Copy. And then the mercy is within their jurisdiction outside of the city limits to their boundary?
Yeah.
Okay. And do we have to pay for the Ashland one, or do city employees get that?
No, we don't have to pay for that. Okay. That's just part of the city service.
Molly?
Yeah, so I have the comps. It is an extensive list. I don't have specifically the 5 up and 5 down. It was all the comps that were used. Some were added as comparators, some were added as competitors, some were added because they were specific to an industry. So it is 32 total comps that were used. So I'm happy to show this to you, or I can read them off, or I can email you the actual 5 up and 5 down later.
Yeah, thank you. That would be great. I think just if the public could see that, it would maybe show a little bit more transparency.
So as a reminder, the public can see it. They can watch it from the meeting recording, and it's available in the agenda packets as well as the minutes. So that is where, if anyone is interested in finding it, they can find it.
Yeah, I hear that, but sometimes people feel that it's hidden. And if we have hot button topics like this, I think that they should be out in the open where they're really easy to find and really easy to see. So people that aren't as tech savvy or maybe that don't have the same time that we do to dig for that stuff can see it. And there's just less questions and it sets us up for more success. Thanks.
Councilor Bloom?
Yeah, thank you. I concur with Councilor Sherrill on that point, and to your point that it's something that could be viewed in a meeting that's not available to us now. So with more time, would you be able to provide that information in a public meeting? The 5 up and 5 down?
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Councilor Duquesne?
Thank you, Mayor. I have to say that I 100% agree with my two colleagues and what was brought forth before. And I would like to say that I heard the words retention brought up before and recruitment. We just recruited 40 new staff members and retention seems to be holding well. When I look at this, and because this is the last thing on the agenda and being brought up and being 100% transparent, especially after post-budget, it seems kind of odd to bring this up now. So my question with this is, how do we justify this? I mean, I understand comp and class, it's been a while, but how do we justify with no performance levels, no outcomes, and I just feel as if it seems unusual that we would be going for this at this time. And I believe that you did mention, Sabrina, it's been budgeted for, correct?
Some of it has been budgeted for.
Until the end of the year or the end of the biennium?
For the next biennium. So we're going to need to adjust some things to incorporate all of the union contracts that are coming forward. And as a reminder, the budget is a best guess of how we will operate for the next 2 years. So you will see multiple adjustments beyond this over the next 2 years with the budget.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I did not support the budget, and so I don't feel like I will be supporting this either.
So we are at questions. Councilor Hanson?
Thanks, Mayor. Molly, would you please take us back 2 years and give us a picture of the landscape from an HR perspective, either a percentage or numbers, how many open spots we had in the city in 2023?
I don't have the specific number of open spots. I have turnover rate. In 2022, it was 17%. In 2023, it was 8%. And in 2024, it was 8%.
8. And do you remember of our 200 plus positions, roughly how many were open at the beginning of 2023?
I would have no idea. That's kind of an ever-evolving
I remember it being high. Does anybody else at this dais remember?
It most likely was with the 17% turnover from 2022.
Right, and we're getting there. So now, what does our staffing level look like? Like 90% or something, 95%?
Most likely, I would have to run the numbers, but we are getting filled.
We're getting
yeah,
close.
we are. I will say that we are onboarding people, multiple people, every week. We are filling positions, and we're filling multiple positions. So,
wow. Well, congrats. And I think the general sentiment when I joined council in 23 was there was an exodus from the pandemic, and there was a perception that our neighboring communities were paying a lot more than us, and that the reality was that many people were leaving to neighboring cities, and they're coming back now.
Mm-hmm.
And as a business owner that also budgets and looks at COLAs as well as raise increases for, substantial increase in job description for management or, more responsibility or whatever, 2% is modest for the COLAs. We used 4% based on the Portland index we round up. That's just our business model. It's what we do as we strive to be an employer of choice too. I understand. I look at these numbers, and the pay does not look exorbitant from where I sit from any position, whether it's a tech or a manager or a director. So just to any public that cares, that's listening, that wants an opinion from a business owner, I'm giving it. I think it's fair. I think it's generous. I wish I had the benefit package for my employees that we have for our city employees, but
Councilor, do you have a question?
I'm glad to hear that our numbers are up, and I thank you for that.
Sabrina, can you just speak to the timing of union contracts? It's been my experience that while they are negotiated over a certain period of time, they are typically retroactive to the beginning of the fiscal year. Is that correct?
Correct. So they will go back to July 1, regardless of when we bring them forward and get them completed.
Right. And so this management resolution is really about those people at the city who are not going to be represented in those union contracts.
Correct.
Right? And so the question is, what happens to the unrepresented people in terms of wages and benefits? Because all of the unionized folks are going to be moving through this process that becomes retroactive on July 1st. So we typically see an adjustment for the management group that is unrepresented before we come into the new fiscal year so that they can immediately start, because we're not waiting on a process for them to complete.
We're not waiting on a process, and it takes a lot of administrative work to do this type of thing. And so having, this come in with all of the CBAs at the same time is a bit much to process. And so this was ready to go, so we brought it forward. It's 0.1% of the city's budget. So we feel like this is reasonable to move forward and be able to implement this specific item and have that complete before the other CBAs need to be implemented as well.
Okay. Councilor Bloom.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Was this on a look ahead?
I believe it was on the last look ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry, I must have missed it. Yeah, I have no other questions, and if nobody has questions or public testimony, I'm happy to make a motion.
We have testimony. Alex Soul, you'll have 3 minutes, and you'll come to that microphone. You'll get a first chime at 20 seconds when you have 20 seconds left, and the second time will be
can I pull
when
up
you're done.
my script, please, and then I start the time?
Can you what?
I just want to pull up my script here.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you.
And just please give us your name and the city in which you reside at the beginning of your testimony.
My name is Alex Soul, and I reside in Ashland, Oregon.
Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, council members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. I'm just going to speak plainly and bluntly as someone who represents the community and understands what they're feeling, and they do not support this measure at all. My water bill is set to rise 90% over the next decade. Our utility bills now include $17 additional fees a month that were imposed by this body on us property owners. And tonight, you are going to vote on a $2 million raise, not for services, not for the public, but for the highest paid city employees to receive the maximum benefit. It should not be about retention, because they're already hiring employees, and to retain the city controller at 180, the attorney at 200,000. I think those are attainable costs to retain their services. How is $190,000 salary not enough? I'm very confused. The city manager would make more than a United States senator at a time when splash pads for little kids are being cut by the parks and recreation person, and our time with our children and our services are being denied so that you can fund a pay raise. Now, you must all understand how the optics of this looks. I have spoken to 100 people. Not one has been pleased by this. Not one. I swear to you on that. 100 people. I've asked, how do you feel about this? The optics of this at a time when we are being overtaxed, and we are frankly being taxed out of this community. And I will close with this. Today on Nextdoor, a Rite Aid employee, posted, "Can someone help me because I'm sleeping in my car?" He's a full-time Rite Aid employee and he has no home. And now you're going to stand here and vote to give $2 million in this moment in time, at this moment in crisis of confidence, a pay raise. I want to just tell you, the community is going to reject you wholeheartedly. And you will hear the full force of this community, and I will be the first one leading the charge. No one's saying you don't deserve raises. No one is saying you guys are not very competent people. But this is not a business, sir. This is a government, and it does not run the same as a business. And there are stakeholders, such as my little girl, that deserves a splash pad time, not be cut so that you guys can get raises. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any further questions of staff? Okay, the floor is open for a motion. Councilor Bloom?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I move to table resolution number 2025-22 for the next council study session after 90 days.
I'll second that.
Councilor Bloom?
Thank you. I want to express my hesitation in moving this resolution forward at this time. We just concluded a very difficult and at times contentious budget process where every department was asked to make 5% cuts, and we voted to raise utility-based fees to fund critical services like public safety, wildfire prevention, and parks. That was just a few weeks ago, and our community is still processing the real impacts of those decisions on their monthly bills. Given that context, I find it challenging to justify moving forward with a resolution that includes across-the-board wage adjustments and enhanced compensation policies for non-represented employees, especially when the message we just sent to the public was one of fiscal restraint and shared sacrifice. I understand that this resolution codifies conditions for employees who do not have the benefit of collective bargaining, and I value the contributions of our management and confidential staff. But the timing of this proposal, so close on the heels of fee increases and service cuts, undermines public confidence. In short, while I support fair and competitive compensation, now is not the right moment for this action. I would be more comfortable revisiting it once we've had a broader conversation about implementation timing and fiscal impact.
Councilor Dale?
Thank you, Mayor. It would be a huge mistake, I would say, for anyone to think that my seconding this has anything to do with our staff and how amazing that they are and the work that they put in. I would also like to say that it is extremely disappointing to have information around the community that lends itself to a lot of the negative feelings that are out there and quite honestly is misinformation. Now, I would also take blame for that because I would want us as a city to be collectively leading the charge relative to that information. That said, I also want to speak specifically to our city manager. And I am disinterested in having any discussion about whether someone is deserving of a certain pay, any of our staff members, whether they're qualified for a certain salary. That is not a discussion I'm interested in having at all. I think, as I go to these League of Oregon Cities meetings and I sit with other city managers and other councilors and other mayors, and every city manager that I've met in other cities has looked at Sabrina and said, I don't know how you do it with 6, 7 unions. I've got 3 and it's too much. I mean, all the things that she's done in a short period of time, I have an incredible amount of appreciation for, along with her staff. The only reason that I want to table this is because for me personally in my role here as this body and our role in oversight and fiduciary responsibility is this is solely a matter of timing. Got this on a Thursday afternoon. I saw it on the look ahead which I didn't even know what it was. It just said management resolution, new business on the second to last look ahead. I didn't know. I would have, in retrospect, should have asked the question of what that was. But I got it on the weekend. it was Father's Day weekend. We started digging into this on Monday, and I just don't feel that 8 hours is time to really consider this, to discuss. It's certainly warranted, but I need to understand it in the context of a larger forecasting discussion and the financial health, and that's just, call it the after effects of this most recent budget. So this is not a rebuke of staff or voting no. This is just time to be able to thoughtfully consider the holistic effects, and that is why I chose to second this. Thank you.
Further discussion, Councilor Hansen?
Yeah, I will not be supporting that resolution. I know that there was a lot of thought and hard work that went into this comp and class study, and I was talking to street divisions person not too long ago when this was all swirling, and they had a lot of thoughts and questions and concerns, and I listened with very attentive interest. This process to increase the workers' COLA 2% is well documented. It seems right. The timing with the budget, I understand it. I wish we had had more time as a community. But workers need increased pay when costs are skyrocketing. And our municipal budget is our best guess for the next 2 years. We are going to make an adjustment. We have to make an adjustment, and after the labor negotiations, we'll have to make another adjustment. This is a city municipality, not a business. We are here to provide services. Without people turning on the water and the electricity and cleaning your trash cans in your parks, there will be a riot in the streets. You think 100 people are upset about this? I believe it. I believe it. But there's 21,000 people in this city that rely on these city workers that are busting their butts every day and deserve some portion of the cost of living increase that's happening around them. We can't recapture all of it. The person at Rite Aid that can't find a home, it's disgraceful that this community doesn't have housing for everybody and good paying jobs for everybody. But that's what we're here to do. We're here to build that out. We're not going to solve it in one night. But I will be presenting a resolution to adopt this because I believe that the workers of the city of Ashland deserve it. I believe it's right and fair, and I'm not voting on a pay raise for myself. I wish the misinformation in that article had never came out. I believe that if we had had better information to the public to begin with, and we didn't have that misinformation article, we'd be having a totally different discussion here right now. So that's history. We're going to deal with it, but I do not support these resolutions, and I'll be presenting a counter.
Councilor Kaplan?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I mean, I am very much on the same page with my colleagues who felt that more information, more factual information should have been provided in the staff report, clarifying so that there is not this idea, like we heard from the speaker, that this is a $2 million. This is not $2 million. We heard from the city manager that this is not a $2 million bill, that this is not a raise for these members of this council. It's for both manager and non-managerial staff, 47% non-managerial staff, clerical workers, I suppose, in the non-represented by unions. I guess where I come out on this is I'm supportive of paying our employees a fair wage, and the best approximation of a fair wage is what we got from the comp and class study. That was set at 50%, and there are some organizations that set it at 80% in order to be more competitive and get the absolute best possible employees coming in. Others set it at 30%. In order to try to save a little bit of money in the short term, although that raises costs with turnover. I supported the consultant's report when she explained to us that doing it at 50% makes sense, kind of keeps us competitive, but is not underpaying and overpaying. So I think that all makes a lot of sense. I'm disturbed by a lot of the misinformation that came out into the public. I don't think I need 3 months and a study session to consider this. So I guess I would like to offer an amendment to this resolution to pull that back a little bit, because I'm not sure that a 3-month, 90-day period, so we're going into September, is necessary. I think our employees need clarity about what's happening and not to be worrying that the city council is second-guessing the technical decisions that were driving the proposal. So I'd like to offer an amendment to table this to the second meeting, to the first meeting in August, but to a business session, not to a study session. And my hope is that will also allow us to provide more information to the public, make sure that it's clear to everybody what this is all about, and then we can go forward and consider this on its own merits. So I'd like to that's my motion.
Is there a second to the amendment?
I'm just looking at the look ahead to see what that meeting would be. If you could just give me a moment. You said the business meeting? First in August?
In August. So it's 2 business meetings from now.
Sure.
Procedural point, we have to wait for this resolution to vote before I can drop a new resolution.
Yes.
Second that motion.
Okay. Did you want to speak further?
No, I think the intention is clear. I think we need a little bit of breathing room here and to bring this back on the table. And so that's why I offered that motion to bring it back to a business meeting.
Councilor Bloom?
Yeah, I'm happy with that. I think the important thing is that there is breathing room. We were presented with this comp and class study. I am not dissatisfied with the results of what that is. I am dissatisfied with the process and the speed of which we're doing this so close after the heels of that budget conversation. I think that we need time for the community to digest this. We need time for the city and for this council to properly communicate to the community of what this is and what it looks like, and to combat the disinformation that is out there. That's why I made my original motion to table it, and it is no way a reflection of the comp and class study itself.
Councilor Sherrill?
Yeah, just a question on the, would it be retroactive to, it should be retroactive anyway, so regardless if it takes us 30 or 60 days to make this decision, it's going to go back to July 1st. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, and I would just say, kind of how I started with my questions, I'm going to support this. We need good staff. You're our biggest asset in our city. I know a lot of people don't want to hear that, but I think if they understand it and they see the real dollars, our email inboxes are going to blow up a lot less, and a little bit of time is going to do us all good, I think. So I'm going to support this amended motion.
Councilor Duquesne?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the back and forth with my colleagues. However, this is not personal towards the staff. It's the principal. When I look at, in Ashland, we have 12.7 employees per 1,000 people. And looking at the stats, the money, where are we going to get this money from when people are taxed? And I do believe that it is our responsibility for clarity so that there are no mistakes. So I believe it's up to us to be forthcoming and transparent before things like this even go out. So I support the length in time, giving the community an opportunity to look at this. And I was elected by the people of Ashland, and I stand with the people of Ashland. So I appreciate the time given to let our constituents review this. So I'll be supporting moving on and holding on to it, but we have to be more transparent. And we can't wait until the 11th hour. And I will be supporting this motion.
Okay, so we still have the amendment on the table. That will be the first vote that we take. Is everyone clear about the amendment to change the the date to August, the first meeting
The
in August. First business meeting in August.
meeting in August.
Okay.
First business meeting.
Yeah. Roll call.
Understanding that any approval would be retroactive to July 1st, as is typical.
Roll call, please, Alyssa, on the amendment.
Bloom,
Yes.
Dale,
Yes.
Sherrill,
Yes.
Hanson,
No.
Kaplan.
Yes.
Sorry, Duquesne. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. And now we are back to the main motion as amended with the August first business meeting of the year of August postponement date. Is there any further discussion about the main motion? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Hanson,
No.
Duquesne,
Can you repeat the motion again, please?
move to table the resolution until the first business meeting in August.
Yes.
Kaplan,
Yes.
Bloom,
Yes.
Dale,
Yes.
Sherrill.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Molly. We do not have anything for new business, so city manager report.
Nothing tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
And other business from council members or reports from council liaisons. Councilor Bloom.
Yeah, just briefly, the Early Learning Ad Hoc Committee was very busy trying to put together and adjust what the applications are going to look like. Those have been posted on the city website under the economic development grants. I encourage providers in Ashland to go to that website to look at what the criteria is, and to, if you meet the criteria, please apply. The more programs, the better, the more people and children that we can reach.
Councilor Kaplan.
Yes, Mayor, thanks. I just want to report on a couple of things on the Climate and Environmental Policy Advisory Committee. That the committee at its last meeting last week has undertaken its review and focus of electrification incentives as the council directed it to in last December. So I'm expecting that's going to be coming forward soon. I think the council did, the committee did very nice work on that. The other activity that is being supported by some members of the CPAC is the Recology's waste stream characterization, where a number of the members have gone to the transfer station to review some of a selection of waste being picked up by our garbage trucks. I did my turn yesterday morning when it was nicely cool. And it's a very, very interesting process that is, I think, the first time it's been done here in Ashland. It's been done in other communities. We'll get the full report, or Recology will provide the full report, I think, after this week. It's going to be done 8 times this week, morning and afternoon each day, except for Wednesday, and should have very interesting results too. So we understand what is entering our waste stream that could be recycled, composted, or otherwise handled. And then I would also say that for the Housing and Human Services Advisory Committee, it has begun planning for this year's Community Resources Fair, and that it's also looking forward to receiving proposals for the Beach Creek affordable housing request for proposals at the city, on the city-owned land. So that should be coming. The RFP closed yesterday, I believe, and will be coming to the committee's next meeting.
Councilor Hanson.
Thank you. I just wanted to add from the Transportation Advisory Committee, I've said it once, I'll say it again, that we are gearing up for our transportation system planning process, which is going to have a lot of opportunity for community involvement. So if you are interested in that work, keep your eyes open and your ears open. We should be getting those announcements out as they become available.
Very good. And we have reached the deadline for applications to serve on the ad hoc committee for the 2200 site planning process. So we'll be processing those and look to make the appointments in mid-July. Councilor Hanson.
And I'd like to just give a shout out to City of Ashland and the EPIC group. They put together a great program last night in Lithia Park. Saw many of the folks that were in this room immediately down there. Looked like a couple hundred people rocking out, having a good time, food trucks, families, dancing and smiles. It just felt like Ashland's best was represented there. So again, thank you to the participants and the organizers and the City of Ashland for sponsoring that event. It was awesome. And we have 2 more coming up. 2 more, am I correct? Or is it 3? Yeah, 3 more. 3 more, thank you. As I said it, I was like, no, yeah, so we have 3 more coming up. So yeah, keep your calendars apprised.
Mhm. Great. All right, with that, the floor is open for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.